Okay, welcome back. My name is Richard Bradford, and I am an art teacher and professional artist. I have been teaching in the classroom for the last 15 years. I have taught every grade from kindergarten through 12th grade, and I absolutely love teaching art. I also have some art kits available that I sell, that I create and sell. I have an oil pastel art kit. I have an acrylic art kit. I'm creating a watercolor art kit and many other art kits. These are all-inclusive kits that are designed to have everything that you would need, including video tutorials like this one, to create some wonderful art. All right, let's go ahead and get started. On this one today, we are going to create a kind of a beautiful seascape, kind of a northwestern kind of a seascape. We're gonna have a lot of trees in it. We're gonna have some tiny little waves in it. We're gonna have a pretty sunset in it as well. So let's go ahead and get started. Now, one thing for me, I know basically which colors, what the main colors I'm gonna use are. However, there are times where I add a color here or there that I didn't talk about in the beginning. So just be aware of that. My brain sometimes just goes off and my creative juices start flowing and I start doing things that I didn't plan in the beginning. And usually it turns out, but sometimes it doesn't, but we'll get to that point when we need to. Okay, so some of the colors I'm gonna be using today are phthalo blue. And these are, you can use whatever colors you have. You don't have to use these exact colors, but we are gonna be kind of using kind of a darker blue color, or phthalo blue. This one's called Lake Blue. This one's a little bit lighter color. We are gonna be using black. Sometimes it's called Mars Black or Permanent Black. We are gonna be using some medium yellow. We are gonna be using some crimson and scarlet. So we'll get those there a little bit. We are gonna be using white, titanium white. That's gonna be important. And we are gonna be using some light green and some phthalo green. Phthalo green is an interesting one, and we'll kind of talk about that a little bit later, because it's really pretty until you put it on the canvas. Then it kind of looks a little bit funky. So we have some tricks though that we can use to mild that out a little bit. We'll probably be using some yellow ochre and some burnt sienna as well. If you have burnt umber, that's a good one to use. I don't have that in this kit, but that's okay. We don't need a lot of it, so we will just use what we have. I'm one who likes to mix a lot of colors, so I don't like to use a whole lot of different fancy colors. Like for example, there's no orange here. I always make my own orange. So if I can make it, I try to make it rather than buy it, because I like the colors I can make. So all right, we're gonna get started here. First thing we're gonna do is we are going to find out where our horizon line is. Now for me, I like to use tape. You don't have to. If you think you can do a straight line, that's good. I'm not very good at keeping my line straight. So what I'm gonna do here first is I'm going to measure, see where my horizon line will be. So we're gonna go through and I'm gonna use a pencil here to kind of make my mark. So we're gonna get that up there, about there. We're gonna say it's about, we're using centimeters here. We're gonna do 4 centimeters. That should be good. Let me see here. Yeah, it should give us, no, let's do 4. We'll do 4.5. Okay. 4.5 centimeters is what we are doing. So I'm gonna make 2 marks, and let's go ahead and make it kind of a mark here in the middle. And these pencil marks don't matter. I'm gonna be painting over it all anyway, so it's not a big deal. Okay, now that I got that marked, I'm going to take my tape and I'm going to use my tape. Now I usually use painter's tape, but I'm out of that today, but that's okay. I'm gonna use some Scotch tape. That is perfectly fine. I'm gonna put my tape down along that horizon line, and this just helps me have a pretty straight line. I don't want my line to, one thing that's kind of can be annoying when you're painting is when you don't have a straight line, it's kind of crooked, because it gives the impression that things are leaning to one side. And that can be, it can be a little bit, I don't say disconcerting, but it can distract from your painting. So we'll just say that. All right, now that I have my horizon line identified, I'm going to now work on my horizon for the sky here, this area here, okay? For this is where I'm gonna go to my blues. I'm gonna use a little bit of phthalo blue. All right, let's get some lake blue in here as well. We're definitely gonna be using our white, titanium white, or whatever white you have. I'm going to be using some black. I'm going to be using a lot of colors for this, a huge amount of colors for this. I'm going to be using some crimson as well, or scarlet. Crimson's the darker one. I'm also going to be using some medium yellow as well on this too. So we are going to be, again, using a lot of colors in this one. And I'm just doing a little bit of color on my palette here. I don't want to do a whole lot of, I will be adding more paint to this. Don't worry about that. I will be adding a lot of paint to this, but at first I like to use a little bit because if I use too much, I can't put it back in my tubes. And if I use too little, well, I can always add more. Okay, so we are gonna start at the top here. We're gonna kind of work our way down. The top area here is gonna be a little bit darker because the sun's setting. In fact, we won't see the sun, but we are gonna be able to see remnants of the sun. It's gonna be lighter, more yellow here. But up top here, it's gonna be kind of a darker blue color. And so we're gonna get some phthalo blue and we are gonna get some black. Okay, that is a nice dark color. And to kind of line it up just a titch, we are going to add a little bit of our titanium white in here. And that's just gonna make it so our blue is not so intense. Now there's a lot of times where I will start putting color down and I'll think, oh, that's not good. And I will add or take away, you know, or well, can't take away, I'll add more color to it, or, you know, add some tint or some shade to it. But this is okay. I actually kind of, let's get some of the lake blue in here. Okay. Oh, okay, that's nice. We can do that. We can work with this. Okay. Now, as I move down, I'm adding white. Just adding white there. And my palette is wet enough right now that I don't have to mix these colors on my palette, on my, my canvas is wet enough right now that I don't have to mix when I add the white. Sometimes I like to just put that white right onto the canvas. Sometimes I mix it down in here to line up, but a lot of times I just take that white and I just add it in here. Just add it right in and blend it right in. You can do that if your paints on your canvas are wet. Mine were pretty wet. I used a lot of water there to get started. I want to lighten this area up here a little bit. Well, let's see here. I want to be careful. I'm just kind of lightening things here a little bit. Lighten some areas up. Okay. Now, so that's the first part of my sky. I'm going to clean my brush off. Now, with acrylic paints, there's good and bad news. Good news is they dry fast. Bad news is they dry fast. So if you're trying to mix colors on your canvas, you can run a situation where your colors dry out real fast. There's a couple of ways you can handle that though. Number one, add a little bit more water. Now you got to be careful because water will also make it so your paints really won't, they'll kind of separate and they won't cover an area very, very well. But you can add a little bit of water, make sure your paints are wet, or you can add what's called a medium. They have these mediums that they sell, and that is a liquid. Sometimes you can get it in gels, you can get it kind of a thin liquid or a thicker liquid. They have matte mediums, they have glossy mediums, they even have mediums that have sparkles and shimmers in them. And those mediums are designed to help keep your paints wet, help them stay wet a little bit longer, help them mix a little bit better. You can mix them a little bit easier on your palette or on your canvas. It also, I've noticed that it kind of makes them a little bit smoother on your canvas. Gives it kind of, in my opinion, a little bit more of an oil painting effect. I actually have, when I go through and do art shows, okay, enough talking, but I'm gonna go through. I'm gonna add a little bit more white to my palette here. But when I do art shows and I display my professional work, I quite often have individuals that will ask if my paintings are oil paintings, because I love getting that smooth texture in there and the bright, vibrant colors and mixing that around. Okay, so now I'm using my white and I'm using my scarlet and using some of my yellow in there, my medium yellow. Okay, and what I'm going to do now is I'm going to kind of, should be dry enough there. I'm going to kind of start working this around in these areas that's a little bit too red for me. So I'm add a little bit more yellow, tad bit more water. And I'm gonna kind of work this around a little bit. Need more white. Okay, that's starting to work a little bit there. Now, as I get into these other areas, as I start working up into the blue, sometimes, especially if my blue is not dry, it kind of turns into this green color. And I don't really like that because that doesn't look very natural, doesn't look very good. So what I tend to do then is in those areas where it's doing that is I will add some white in there. Add white in there and then kind of go over it again. Add a little bit white in there. And then I kind of go over it again. But we're gonna kind of lighten this area up here. We're gonna create some other colors and some purples in there because our light's gonna kind of bleed out into this area here. But we wanna dry that. Give us a little bit of time to dry off. Now I'm adding a little bit of yellow in here because this is, again, where my sun is, where my sun has set. So I'm gonna kind of lighten this area up here up a little bit. But again, we kind of want to give some time for this to dry here. So I'm gonna go ahead and pause the video, give this a chance to dry, and then we'll move on from there. All right, we are back. Okay, giving it a few minutes to dry. Hopefully it's dry enough. I think we're probably good here. I'm gonna add a little bit. I'm gonna lighten this area up here. I noticed on camera, I was looking at the film, this looks really, really dark. It's not nearly as dark as it looks. I'll probably have to make some adjustments on the video there to make sure it doesn't appear quite as dark as it looks on there, because it's not a dark painting, although it does for some reason really kind of appear that way. All right, so what I'm doing right now is I'm trying to lighten up this area here where our sun is, kind of setting here. And I'm gonna add I'm gonna bring up some brush strokes like this a little bit. Let's add a little bit, tiny bit of red. When you're making an orange color, you don't want as much red in there as you think you might. You want more yellow than you do want red in there. Otherwise, you're gonna get it's not gonna look right. A very weird, kind of very reddish orange color. Now, what I'm doing right now is I don't have a whole lot of paint on my brush, and I'm bringing a little bit of this orange color into my sky area here up there. Just blending it in there just a little bit. And I'm gonna kind of turn it a little bit pink. We're gonna add some more kind of a pink color in this. because as it blends up, it kind of turns into kind of a pink, and we'll get some purple colors in there a little bit. So what I'm just doing right now is I'm just adding some pink into this, some hints of pink. And then I'm using the edge of my brush to kind of go back and forth a little bit, because what I'm doing is now, see the stuff right here, I'm creating clouds, the impression of clouds. That's what this pink is reflecting off of. I mean, it's coming from our sunset, but what it is it's the way we're able to see it is it's reflecting off the clouds. I'll bring a little bit down into here, and I'm just lightly bringing that out. Just lightly kind of blending that out into there. Okay. Now I'm going to lighten this area up here a little bit more. Let me clean my brush off really well. I'm going to use a different brush on this one, kind of a smaller brush, because I'm going to try to get a little bit more detail in there. And I'm going to add a little bit of yellow, a little bit of white. Yes, I am mixing it over where the black is. That's okay. Remember, my brain goes 100 miles an hour, and sometimes I just let myself go. All right, so we are adding a little bit of white in here with some yellow, but we're gonna put a little bit more white in there, because what we are doing right now is we are lightening this up here, because this is where our sun is setting. And I'm gonna bring that out like that. Yeah. Ooh, that's looking very nice. Very nice. I hope it's showing up well on camera. And I'm just gonna add a little bit more, lighten this area right up in there. Okay, that is basically our sky, and I'm not sure how it looks. I'm gonna bring it up a little bit up here so you can see. Again, it looks really dark on camera, but it's not nearly as dark as it shows on camera. All right, now I'm gonna give this a chance to dry real quick, and then we're gonna come back. All right, I think we are good. Now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take my number 1 brush. This is a really small brush, and what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna use it to kind of create, I'm gonna use it to kind of really lighten up this area here, my horizon line, in this one area right over here where we figure our sun is kind of just barely peaked below. And I'm going to also, I'm gonna make sure it's really thin. I'm gonna just kind of do a little bit of like cloud work right in there. So it appears that we've got the sun setting right there. We've got it shining on some clouds. And now that I've got that done, I'm going to take off my tape. Okay, good. Line's not too bad there. Okay, so now I've got my horizon line. I've got my line where my sky meets my ocean. Now, quite often what I do is I will take that tape, and when this is really dry, I will put this tape over in this area here so I can have a nice smooth line right over here. I can have a nice smooth line where my ocean meets my sky there. A good, nice, smooth horizon line. But what I think I'm going to do in this case is I'm just going to go ahead and start kind of my ocean area, because in the first part of my ocean where my ocean meets my sky, that line right there, it's going to be kind of a dark, kind of an orangish color. So we're going to create that. because what it is it's, you've got the sky really reflecting, giving a good reflection right there. So it's going to be kind of a darker orangish color. So I'm making my orange, and I'm adding some white to it to kind of make it more of a peach color, bring some softness to it. Now I'm going to kind of start over here, and I'm just going to kind of come across, and I probably won't even make it a little bit darker. You know what? I'm going to add a little tiny bit of blue to it to make it kind of give it a slight hint of purple. And I'm going across. Go across right here. As I do that, I'm going to actually add a little bit more of my lake blue into it. And I'm going to add a little bit of water. Just a touch of my lake blue. And there, bring it. We're going to lighten this area up here a lot too. Because this area right here is going to be pretty, on our outskirts here, it's going to be a little bit more, this is going to be pretty bright in here, because this is where the sun is reflecting. So that where I have this kind of darker color there, I'm gonna add some water to that and kind of lighten that up, because that's going to actually be pretty reflective of this area, that sky there. So this area right here is going to be yellow and orange and pinkish. This will be a little bit of pink over here, and then we'll kind of get in darker colors here as we move away from the horizon on there. Okay, so we're just going to start to do a little bit of our ocean. So I am going to make some, there we go. And we're going to kind of just go right in here like this. And we're going to bring it right up to the edge. There we go. Add a little bit more red in there. A bit more water. Okay. And now, what I'm going to do is, I'm going to go ahead. We're going to have some land that's going to be over here, so I'm not really concerned about this area right here right now, because we are going to have some land. In fact, I'll go ahead and kind of outline that for you a little bit here. I'm going to take some of my black and just kind of, we're going to have land that's going to come right down here. And we're going to add some trees onto that, so I'm not so concerned about that right here. And we're going to have some land that's going to come right down here as well. It's going to come down. This is going to come pretty far into that. There we go. And then we're going to have some rocks and some more land that's going to come out here. And some more rocks. But we're not really even going to see. This is all going to be kind of foliage and rocks right over here on the left. So we're going to block kind of that whole area there. And it comes out a little bit. We got some big rocks that kind of come out. Same thing over here. We're gonna have foliage that's gonna go ahead and cover that whole thing, that whole area up here. It's gonna come out. Okay. But we're gonna have some trees that are gonna come right over here. But we're gonna work on getting our water in place. Now for this, I'm gonna use a little bit of black, and I'm gonna use some phthalo blue, and more my black, a little bit more white in there. I'm gonna create kind of a very dark blue. I'm gonna, you know what, this is where I'm gonna add a little tiny bit of my phthalo green. Tiny bit of it, just to kind of make it so it's not so overwhelmingly blue. There we go. Okay. And I'm just gonna kind of go right up in here, and we're gonna get this nice and good up in here. And this is not gonna be really our final color. We're gonna be changing this up a little bit. Add some waves in here. What we're trying to do is we're just trying to lay out a base color for our ocean or water. Okay. And there's lots of artists that'll do this differently. You may have an artist that says, Mr. Bradford is doing this totally wrong, and that's fine. I don't care. There's lots of different ways to skin a cat. So this is just one of the ways. So I'm kind of laying out my water here. This area is going to be foliage. And I'm going to use the edge of my brush here. This is my 1/2-inch brush, but I'm just kind of using it. What I'm doing is I'm just creating some wave effects. So where the shadows are, we're going to lighten up some areas as well. And we're going to bring some of that lightness down in here as well. So we kind of want this to dry a little bit. What I'm going to do is clean off my brush though, and I'm going to take what I have over here. I'm going to add some more white. I use a lot of white in my paintings because it can really soften up colors. So I'm going to take this color that I had down here before, my ocean color, and I'm going to add white to it. Add a little bit more white to it. Soften it up. And then I'm going to just kind of go along here. We're still a little bit too bright, but that's okay. We're still a little bit too wet. So I'm going to let this dry a little bit here, and then we'll get back to that. All right, I've had a little bit of time for this to dry. So now I've lightened up a little bit, and what I'm doing right now is I'm just kind of going back and forth here to kind of lighten up some areas. I'm going to use my brush, the edge of my brush to kind of, and we've got the waves. These are soft waves. These are not hard waves coming in. So I'm just creating some wave effects in here. So just going through and creating lots of effects of waves. A little bit. Then move back and forth here. Do a little bit even lighter. We're going to go through. Well, starting to look a little bit more like water. I I'm gonna use a smaller brush, I think it was my number 1 brush here, yeah. And I'm gonna go through and kind of bring some lighter colors up top here. Some more yellow right up here in this area here. Just some highlights, because what I want to do is, I gotta add more water to that. Might have to switch brushes here. This might be a little bit too thin, but what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to lighten up this area here. Yeah, in fact, I'm gonna use a different brush. I'm gonna go into my number 6 brush here, because it's not giving me the effect that I want yet. So I'm just using some of the medium yellow and some of the white, and I'm just trying to, I just want to create some highlight. There we go. In here, because this is my area. More yellow. This is my area where my sun is, and it's kind of reflected in the water there. So we want that effect here. Now we have a little bit of a, I wouldn't say a problem, but we have a little bit kind of an issue because we have such darkness down here, right here, but I want some reflection of that yellow and orange in there. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take some white, and I'm just going to touch around here. Because what I'm going to end up doing is I'm going to add some yellow to it. But that yellow would not look, it would be very, I'm going to add some orange and some yellow. But the problem is if I try to add that right in here, that orange and that yellow, it's going to look more green. And I don't want that. I want to get the reflection of this nice sunset in this. So I'm going to lay down a little bit of white first. And then I'm going to go to my red. Kind of put a little bit of pink in there. Yeah, that's starting to look nice. And then a little bit, we're gonna make it, we're gonna get some of that orange. We're gonna kind of, there we go. There we go. Some of that pink, some of that orange in there. Great. Now it's kind of reflecting down in there. Okay, now we're gonna add some dark spots in here in our water. So I'm going to clean off that brush real well, and I'm going to get my black. We want it to be kind of dark. A little bit of my phthalo blue in there. I want it to be pretty dark. And we're going to create some dark spots in here. Add a little bit of water to that. Otherwise, we're not going to get the effect that we want. Okay. And what I'm doing right now is I'm just creating some kind of, you know, as the waves are kind of coming, you've got these, they kind of come up and catch the light. You've got also areas that really stay pretty dark. And so that's kind of what I'm doing. Now I'm going to bring this up into here a little bit more. Because, and actually this area here is not really catching as much light as this area. So we're gonna kind of darken up these areas here. And the same thing over here. Okay. Now we're getting a good water effect there. All right, now let's work on the foliage. We might come back to the water a little bit, but we're gonna work on some foliage here. Okay, there's a couple ways I like to do this. This is a wood chip brush, and I love this brush because it's great for helping create foliage. But I'm gonna take this brush here, and the reason why is because it's got some separation there in the bristles, and that's good. I like that because we're gonna create some trees, and we're gonna use our phthalo blue. We're gonna use a little bit of burnt sienna on this. We need to soften up these greens. And if you don't like the green that you have, you can always create green, obviously, by using blue and yellow. In fact, we're gonna bring a little bit of yellow in here, a little bit more yellow. Lay that down. We're gonna create a nice blue color, or a nice green color here. We want a dark green color. We're gonna add a little bit of burnt sienna there. Give us kind of a very pretty dark green color, and we're just gonna kind of add just a titch of black in there. Because what we're doing right now is we're creating some, I guess these would be evergreen trees off in the distance. So this is kind of a little, it might be a little peninsula kind of sticking out there. Just at the edge of our inlet here. And I'm just tapping, take your time. You rush, you're gonna not like your results. So take your time, go through, and we're just tapping along here, creating our effects of our trees. Okay. All right, we're gonna kind of do the same thing over here. Take your time. You do not want to rush these, otherwise your trees are gonna look really funky. Okay, let's take your time. All right. Now I'm gonna add a little bit more black in there. I'm gonna layer my colors in here because I want, this area here is not getting a lot of sunlight. So I kind of want this area here to be kind of dark. And then this right here, I'm gonna just kind of make this a little bit more defined as far as land goes. So we add a little bit of black. Okay, and then we're gonna do some rocks that are coming out here. Maybe even some rocks out here. Kind of this maybe sticks out in the ocean there a lot. Okay. And we're just gonna, we got some rocks here too. Wherever you want to put rocks. There's some rocks here. And I'm just, with my black, I'm just kind of tapping it around. I'm gonna add some details later as I define my rocks a little bit better and where they are and what's happening there. But I'm just kind of going through and just tapping around, deciding, oh, there's a rock here. Let's go through and do that. We're gonna go through. Boy, I don't know if you can hear that. There's some construction going on, and it is, sounds like one of the machines is dying, but that's okay. All right, so we're gonna add some land. In fact, we're gonna put some rocks that kind of come out kind of far here. Okay, and I'm gonna go through. Now I'm gonna add a little bit of white, and we're gonna kind of put some white on some of our rocks here, just to kind of highlight maybe the tops of them a little bit. Now we want to be careful doing too much white, and I can always move that white with my black because we don't want it to. Remember, we've got a setting sun, so there's not going to be a whole lot of white on that. You know, on the back side of the rock, we're not going to see too much because should be pretty pretty dark because it's not getting a whole lot of light there. All right, so we'll come back to the rocks in a little bit here, but I'm going to create some more trees, some more foliage. Okay, so this is where I'm going to start to use my chip brush. I love my chip brush because it's such a mess. It is just a mess, and it creates a wonderful effect. So the way I'm going to use it is I'm going to go through. Now I've got to get my colors right on this. So I'm going to actually put my colors probably over here on my. I've got this paper that's protecting my table, but I'm going to put some green here. Okay, I'm going to put some burnt sienna. Let's get a little bit of black, because we're going to make kind of our leaves kind of dark at first. We can kind of lighten them up a little bit, but all right. Now let's see what we got here. I see I'm kind of mixing them around here. Let's get a little bit more of that. Maybe a titch of black, more green in there, a little bit more burnt sienna, more green, more green. I got a little too much brown in there, so I'm going to add some green in this. There we go. I think that's nice. Okay, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my brush and I'm just going to kind of tap it around. Tap it around. Because what I'm doing is, this is a tree that's got some foliage that's coming out. Okay, now I don't want to tap it too much. I don't want to bring it I don't want to ruin the effects I've already gotten in other areas as well. So I'm going to do this as well here. So we've got a tree that's kind of sticking out. Let's get a little bit of water on there. Okay. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to create some of I've got my foliage, my leaves and stuff. I'm going to create some branches and some tree trunks. So I'm going to create kind of a tree trunk effect that comes out there. I'm going to turn this a little bit. I want this to be not as thick. And I'm going to create more branches, more trees. Same thing here. We are going to through and give our tree what we're doing is we're just kind of creating some trees and some foliage that's going to kind of come out here and show itself. In fact, let's bring one of the rocks out here a little bit farther and maybe bring another tree in there. Same thing over here. And a big old tree trunk that just kind of, well, let's do this. Okay, now I got to add some more foliage. So if I feel like, you know what, I'm getting to the point where this brush is maybe not giving me the effect I want, I can always take my other brushes. I'm going to add that, and I will. I'll go through and kind of clean up some areas with one of my other brushes, but right now that's a little bit too much water. You put too much water in there, you're just going to get blobs. You're not going to get the effect of what you're looking for, where you've got some tree branches and stuff. We don't want that. We don't want the blobs. We want tree branches. Now down in here, if I want, I can kind of tap around here and give some color to these areas here. A little bit of greenery to that. Okay. So we're getting pretty close to what I would call complete. I'm going to add just a little bit of black in here just to kind of darken up some of the water in the shadow areas. because these areas over here are going to be kind of darker because they're not getting as much light. Like that right there is going to be darker. That's not going to get much light. And there's going to be darker right there. A little bit more black in there. The other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to add a little bit of white to kind of, maybe even some burnt sienna to kind of add a little bit of kind of color to my rocks. Okay, and we're gonna darken that up there. A little bit of black, kind of mix that around. Okay, and that's pretty much what we got. This is our sunset little cove beach area. So this is what it looks like. Kind of fix these areas here a little bit, but this is what it looks like. This is what we got. So when you're working on this, you don't have to make it look exactly like this. You can take ideas that you want and use them to create your own seascape or your own sunset. It's up to you. However you want to do it. You be as creative as you want. And I hope you enjoyed the tutorial. Hope you got something out of it. And if you have one of my art kits, I hope you have a good time with that and you learn a lot and create some wonderful things. And tell your friends about it if you like it. And don't forget to click like and subscribe.